All right, guys, here we are back at the board again, and we are going to talk a little bit about the sermon recording process, just a little more, just to kind of brush up on stuff that maybe we've forgotten about and kind of re-hone in the concept of how we do this. So if we know that our headset is kind of fine-tuned in a way. The EQ is very drastic because we know that microphone we're dealing with can be very problematic if we don't do these kinds of things. So we have it set up a certain way via compression and EQ and gating that sounds good in this room, right? But not so good if we just listen to it through the headphones. And so we don't want to send that to our recording because we sound quite terrible. So what we want to do is send it to a different input that has very different EQ and will have very different compression. And we do it that way because we want it to sound good in that recording. So that's why we have this set up with two different inputs. This one's for the sanctuary. This one's for what is being heard in the foyer and what's being heard on the recording. That's why it's called foyer record, because it sends to both. If we're just talking about the recording aspect, it then, after the processing here on the foyer record, it then gets sent to what we call the foyer speaking bus, right? And that is this guy sitting right next to it. So when we look at that guy, we'll pull it up, and it's going to have just a little bit of work done on it as well. Not very much, just a little bit of coloring EQ to make it sound a little brighter, cleaner, getting rid of a little bit of the mud in that spot. So we have gone through the process of taking it to this, and then to this, and then it goes from this directly over to the recording matrix. And that would be this guy. And in the recording matrix, we have our room mics coming directly in left and right, and they're coming in at these levels. So the foyer speaking bus itself is being sent directly to the matrix via sends, while the room mics are being sent directly to the input, the matrix through inputs on these two. So that's how we get the three different signals coming into that matrix. We then have basically no compression on this because I don't really think it's necessary for the recording. And then a little bit of adjusted EQ for our actual final process. And we have our limiter, which is going to be fairly closely set up to what we wanted every single week. But we do need to keep an eye on it because when the output is coming through, we want these levels over here to be almost hitting the top most of the time. Granted, there's fluctuation in a signal, especially when someone's speaking. We want it to kind of hover up here. And the way we get it to do that is through the limiter. In our limiter, if we're watching over here on the metering when it's going, this input gain will allow us to adjust our levels up ever so slightly. And then when you get blue signal coming in over here, that means that we're right there at that point, and you'll be able to see it over here on this metering. It'll be right up there near the top. You don't want it to constantly be hitting this though. You basically want to get it up to where you're seeing that blue hit every so often, and then back it off just a smidge to where you see it pop up every once in a while, but it's not hitting it very often. And you'll be able to get that metering going quite right. So I say all that because the more we can hone in on this as a team and do this consistently from week to week, the more consistent our sermon recordings are going to be. And it's going to just be a better listening experience for people that come to it online. It's not going to be constantly shifting from, oh, it's too loud, oh, it's too quiet. We want it to be very consistent on the website. So that's the process. in which we actually get it recorded. We all know that, you know, to record it, we go to this 2-track option here. Then we have the stop and the record feature right here. And that obviously is coming from our USB, you know, port up here in the corner. And it's going to record to the USB via all this. All that's pretty straightforward. We want to make sure this is set up on 2-channel when we record. So just double check that. It shouldn't really be anything different, but just take a glance at it to make sure it's set up that way. Outside of that, I think that's pretty straightforward. That's covering the gist of what we need to know about recording the sermon. All right, guys, have a good one.